My name is Miriam Sullivan, and I'm a director in JFF Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. Next slide, please. And my portfolio of work at the center includes several large-scale manufacturing pathways efforts. And I'm happy to lead you in a session with a colleague of mine, Stuart Bass, in a conversation that will focus on why apprenticeships are an effective strategy for manufacturers. In this session, we'll review the key elements of an apprenticeship. We'll also delve into the design elements of successful apprenticeship. And then we'll close with how you can join us and how we can support you in your work. So it is my pleasure to introduce Stuart Bass, who will help lead us through this discussion. Stu?
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning for those of you in a different time zone. I've been enjoying my work with Jobs for the Future and working for America Institute in helping employers and unions and industry associations to create a synergy in their regions to promote apprenticeship. So when you think about putting together apprenticeships, you start thinking about, well, what are the needs for the folks that are going to actually be either sponsoring them or becoming apprentices. So when we go to the next slide, please. I often start off with wondering why would a company want to have an apprenticeship? So I ask a lot of questions to solicit their needs so we can start to frame the conversation and have it fit into their experience at work. As everybody knows, my age group is starting to check out, and you have a lot of experienced employees leaving and a lack of skilled applicants coming to find the jobs. Some of the folks don't even know what kind of jobs are out there anymore. And now we're coming out of the pandemic, there's going to be a lot of shifts and changes for people with careers. But employers are still finding it challenging to figure out how to recruit new employees for manufacturing jobs. And I ask, how do they do that? And there's often a need for a pipeline or, pre-employment or pre-apprenticeship programs that helps new hires prepare for filling that job and starting to get an idea and orientation to that industry, what it's like in modern day manufacturing, and what it's like. Maybe sometimes you have to work off shift and you have to really have those folks ready to come on the job. Many of the folks, job seekers, may go and attend tech schools, but while they may be good with the book learning, there's still a need for hands-on learning and being familiar with the work environment, the culture, as well as the equipment. So technology is changing, and we're seeing that we need to have folks come into manufacturing jobs ready to do the work. And I often find that these are the pain points for a lot of employers in manufacturing. When we go to the next slide, you'll see how it might fit for the apprentice. So, the idea is that the employers need certain skill sets. These days, it's not just turning a wrench or anything like that. You really need to understand how the component that you're working on and how the process you're working on fits in with the manufacturing processes. There's a real need. Many employers have said they need a lot of folks that can handle math, shop math. They can handle communication, written, because these days there's a lot of reporting that has to go into database management. They have to know how to do calibration and particularly maintain a safe work environment. These are all critical skill sets that many manufacturing employers are expressing that they need. And when I hear these types of responses, I know that an apprenticeship program would be right for them. When we go to the next slide, you start thinking about what's happening these days. There's some estimates that 30% of folks who are affected by the pandemic with unemployment are going to be forced to change careers or learn new skill sets for new jobs. The manufacturing industry is going through a big change where now the employers in manufacturing are responding to the market in a very agile way. They need to be able to change their recipes or for food processing. They need to change their processes to customize products. And they need to be able to do it with packaging. So there's all this now computer controlled devices. I've been in one workshop one shop that manufactures paper products for healthcare, and they have a robotic forklift driver. Well, there's going to be a need for folks for increasing quality control, also as well as computer controlled electrical and mechanical processes. And there's also going to be a real need to be able to interface with artificial intelligence. All this is starting to happen now, and we need to be prepared for it. When you go to the next slide, we'll hear about how effective apprenticeships can produce a return on investment.
Yeah, thank you, Stu, and really for grounding us in the why this matters, and I'll really talk about, how apprenticeships have a high value for employers. In particular, within the manufacturing context, Stu started alluding to this with the need for quality control. What we found from our work within the space of developing, high quality apprenticeships is that apprenticeships helps employers with machine reliability. So meaning the machine is operating without failure, which is really important for manufacturers. Another thing we found through our work and through research is that high quality apprenticeship programs within manufacturing lead to labor savings and part savings. So that means reduce waste and scrap for our manufacturers. And what we know really from evidence from, Stu and I worked on an American apprenticeship initiative between 2015 and 2020, where we put more than 2,000 individuals into apprenticeship programs with 200 employers across 30 different advanced manufacturing occupations. What we know based on our work on the ground with, labor intermediaries, workforce intermediaries across the country is that reliable training, like apprenticeship, lead to success. So they lead to less defects, and it's worker focused, right? It's the workers who set up, who operate, who maintain the machinery that allows manufacturers to meet their production goals, and really keeping workers' skills up to date. Stu talked about AI and increase in automation. But keeping skills up to date while motivating them to find ways to improve efficiency. That is a key return on investment and a key benefit for employers. There's a lot of data and research out there, and at JFF, we love to mine the data and really hear what's happening. And there's a 2012 Chamber of Commerce and Case Western study that found that all companies, that conducted apprenticeships found value, regardless of cost. And there's a DOL study that mentions that employers get $1.47 back in increased productivity for every dollar spent. On the next slide. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what we learned from the work that we did. So we conducted our own return on investment study for the industrial manufacturing technician apprenticeship. So that was an apprenticeship that we developed with WRTP, and then we scaled up with Working for America Institute and a number of other intermediary organizations found in the Midwest and generally across the country. So as part of that, we conducted a return on investment study just to validate some of the findings we were hearing from the larger national scale studies. And our findings were a little bit better. What we found was that for every dollar a business spent on an IMT apprenticeship program, they yielded an average of $1.48 in revenue as a result of the apprentices' work. The study also confirmed some additional benefits. The study confirmed that the IMT apprenticeship allowed for upskilling of incumbent workers. The study found that improved retention and recruitment, increased productivity, and also improved quality. So we were able to validate that for an apprenticeship program that we were working on. And what's more that we found through the study was that businesses were seeing these positive returns throughout the course of the apprenticeship programs. So not just when the apprentice had become a journey worker, suggesting to us that apprenticeships can be effective both as a long-term strategy for workforce growth, but also a short-term solution for meeting current labor supply needs. Next slide. And before I turn it over back to Stu, who'll kind of work us through the remaining themes for our session, I'll talk through a high level. I'll share some high level information about the components of RA programs, just so we have baseline information before we go into the main session and also for this session. So there are 5 components for registered apprenticeship programs. There's business involvement, structured on the job training, related instruction, and rewards for skill gains. And all apprentices receive a national credential. So high quality registered apprenticeships provide all the benefits that I shared. They're sponsored by employers, employer associations, or labor management groups that have the ability to hire and train in a working environment. So the employment opportunity is the most basic requirement for any apprenticeship. And without a job, there is no on-the-job training. It combines supervised, structured on-the-job training with related instruction. And this instruction is theoretical and technical, and it is usually provided by a represented trade group, an employer, a local community college, or a training center. And related instruction is a key part of each apprentice, and the requirement is that there must be 144 hours of related instruction per year. To the national credential, a key component is providing a certificate of completion, one that is recognized and respected in the eyes of federal and state governments and also the industry. And then finally, and I think Stu alluded to this a little bit, apprentices are rewarded through wage increases for their skill gains. So high quality registered apprenticeships have these 5 components. And then I'll turn it over to Stu to share some practices, how to make this happen. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Stu for the next slide.
Thank you, Miriam. Before we go to the next slide, I wanted to point out some things. We talked about how the apprenticeship is good for the business and as well as the apprentice. But I think one thing we want to point out when it comes to the return on investment as well, with the rewards for skill gains. Apprenticeships require a wage progression, starting as the apprentice rate and then leading to the full journey worker rate. During that time period, my friends in the building trades have told me somewhere about midway through the apprenticeship, that apprentice is operating somewhere between 80 to 90% of competency for their skill level. It's at that point that the employer who has invested in all the training is now starting to also see some of the return on investment, and the incentives are the wage gains for the apprentice to keep on learning and achieving. When we go to the next slide, you'll see the type of organizations that it takes to start an apprenticeship. We don't want to go this alone. We're going to talk about this over and over again. There's a lot of resources out here for supporting a startup of an apprenticeship, expanding an apprenticeship, adding trades to the apprenticeship, and recruiting apprentices. This graphic here, thank you to the U.S. Department of Labor, illustrates the dynamics of all the support systems for the apprentice. Going through this quickly, I would point out that the employer has the support of primarily and first from the state apprenticeship or the federal agency. So now that's where the agency helps the potential sponsor, with the paperwork, putting together the program. You have the workforce system. There are a lot of WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act legislation, resources that support apprenticeship now for new hires as well as incumbent or currently employed apprentices. Economic Development has now collaborated with the Department of Labor in producing some opportunities for funding apprenticeship eligible expenses such as tuition reimbursements. Of course, we think about the labor organizations, and in some ways they're a partner with the employer in that center circle in many ways, but they also serve as helping put together the most customized apprenticeship through labor management processes. And if you think of any of the building trades apprenticeships that are the gold standard for apprenticeship, you could see that it's a combination of the contractors as well as the unions for getting those programs to meet the industry needs. We need to talk about recruitment, and that has to, in some ways, start in the education K through 12. When you think about how college, a lot of the counselors in high schools promote college. And now we're talking about the other 4-year program without the debt. But we have to do a cultural shift so that parents and as well as the counselors see the value of apprenticeships so that these students graduate and they don't enter into a debt process, but they can still get college credits for their programs. Community-based organizations are great partners for recruitment, particularly with promoting diversity and helping to have folks have access to these family-sustaining jobs that may have been denied in the past. There's foundation money out there, and the partnership with training providers, including community colleges and 4-year institutions, can align the apprenticeship content with college credit. When you think about what it takes to put all this together, in my mind, those spokes illustrate the role of the intermediaries to pull all this together. These programs don't just fall off the desk. It takes somebody, I don't know, making hundreds of phone calls, scheduling dozens of meetings, maybe hundreds of emails before you finally get a program where they register that program. And the sponsors, you have to have a lot of folks involved with that sponsorship to make sure the employers are getting the program that is customized to meet their needs. When you think about sponsors, we're going to go to the next slide now to show you some examples of different partnerships that can sponsor a program. When we talk about sponsorship, if it's just an employer, it's called an individual sponsorship. When you have an employer and a union present, it's an individual joint apprenticeship. As soon as you get into multiple employers, which these days for small to medium businesses, this is a really good option. You now have the option of different organizations stepping up to be the group sponsor. This illustration shows a couple different varieties, but there's even more than what's illustrated here. When you have multiple businesses, you have to have one organization become the one that's the administrator of the program. That means they document the progress of the apprentices. They interact with the employers to make sure the on-the-job learning is occurring, and they advocate for the apprentice to make sure they're getting all the skill training they need to succeed. There's a need for aligning mentors, the journey workers, with the apprentices. There's scheduling the related technical instruction in the classroom or related supplemental instruction that really is part of the apprentice's theoretical growth. And when you think about what it all takes, it takes training providers, it may take an industry association. It's all supported with the workforce system, making sure that WIOA funds are there to support the new hires and the other eligible expenses, aligning with the public schools or private schools for K through 12. And we think about different models of group sponsorships. In the building trades, you have the model where it's the union and the contractors association that puts together the group sponsorship. In manufacturing, you may see an industry association. You may see a manufacturing extension partnership step up and become a group sponsor. We have models of that. We also have models of community colleges that have stepped up and become a group sponsor with the multiple employers. So when you think about all it takes to bring all this together, again, the role of the intermediaries, whether they're part of the sponsoring organization or they're not, there needs to be this village that supports the growth of the apprenticeship. Please go to the next slide. We don't think you should do this alone. Miriam, would you like to add anything to this? I mean, I'm happy to talk about it, but you've been doing this work for years now. And the role of JFF in supporting this work. Why don't you share a few kind words with us, and then I could pick up for the role of the AFL-CIO Working for America Institute.
Yeah, just a couple of points before I jump off to MC the main session. At JFF, we have an initiative focused on diversifying manufacturing. So JFF received a $12 million contract from the U.S. Department of Labor, where our goal is to put together 750, put 750 apprentices through programming annually between, well, it started September 2020 through 2025. And if you go back to the prior slide, we have subject matter experts on the ground that can help you customize apprenticeships for your company. We're really focusing on broadening manufacturing apprenticeships to include women, people of color, in particular Black, Indigenous, and people of color into apprenticeships, folks that have been underrepresented and not included in these opportunities, and also within the sector. We can help you with a number of things, and Stu will walk you through what those are, but we have SMEs on the ground. Please reach out to us, and Stu will talk to you about how you can do that, but we're willing to help you think through your program. We're willing to help you build out your apprenticeship program, and we're looking forward to connecting with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. I guess we'll see you later, huh?
Yep, see you in 10 minutes.
Okay, now. So you can see that these are some of the resources that you can access. And we have folks that, when Miriam referred to SMEs, it's subject matter experts that have experience with working with putting together partnerships and working with employers and unions. And we have folks that are coming from the education system to help customize the curriculum for your related technical instruction. And as well as helping to align the on-the-job learning with the curriculum from the classroom. There are a few organizations that have created tools for tracking your apprentices, online tools that can help track your apprentices and follow their progress. We also have assistance collaborating with the Office of Apprenticeship and the state apprenticeship agencies to help you with documenting your apprentices in the, I hope I get this right, the Registered Apprenticeship Partners Information Data System, or RAPIDS. So if you go to the next slide, we can talk about the two programs to finish out and maybe answer a question or so. The Department of Labor has been really promoting apprenticeship in America. In the United States, we have a culture shift that's going where we're trying to turn employers' workshops into learning organizations. And this is a culture shift that's been very well supported in a bipartisan way. Well, the Department of Labor funded the Partnership to Advance Manufacturing Apprenticeships with the AFL-CIO Working for America Institute. And this is a 4-year project. We have locations listed here, but I'll tell you, this is where it's grounded, but it also goes beyond in supporting programs across the U.S. And it's focusing on veterans and particularly helping folks that transition from the military to civilian world, as well as improving diversity, equity, and inclusion. Speaking of which, the Jobs for the Future has this project, Idea M. It's improving diversity, equity, and an apprenticeship for manufacturing. That has resources to support eligible expenses, targeting particularly women and folks of color and other targeted populations that would have a real need for having access to apprenticeship. So when I look at the chat, I see there's a couple questions here. Are there materials to show the entry-level manufacturing jobs and career paths to bring people in? There are many models for this. When I think of, I used to work in a shop that made sweaters. I was a machine operator. And when I think about the skill sets required for that job, there's an opportunity here, one, to create a pre-apprenticeship to orient folks for manufacturing jobs. And the machine operator job, the warehouse job, and shipping may be entry-level jobs. All of these jobs require an understanding of the manufacturing process, and there are programs that are registered apprenticeships, such as the Industrial Manufacturing Technician. This targets entry-level jobs and creates a stackable credential, because if you think about it, who better to learn how to fix the machines other than those folks who run the machines? And many employers have seen an increase in job retention and reduction in turnover, reduction in scrap, by actually acknowledging the skills required for these entry-level jobs. This is a 3,000-hour program that's a hybrid, which means folks can move as quick or slow through the program. And there are folks now moving around from companies to companies that can have advanced standing depending on their skill level and their assessment. When you think about the funding sources for different components of registered apprenticeship, you may find there are WIOA funds to support tuition reimbursement. There are WIOA funds such as on-the-job training contracts that provide a 50% or more or less, depending on your workforce board's rules, for offsetting the wages for the first few months of employment. And that's where you have to go to your local workforce board to find out how to access those funds and what is available. There are individual training accounts that, again, another WIOA resource that follows the laid off worker, or the worker who had their plant close on them, or they were laid off due to the pandemic or international trade. There is it's a scholarship. And I must point out to you that once an organization becomes a registered apprenticeship, they are automatically on the eligible training provider list. If you don't know what that is, check out your local workforce board and they'll help you with that, because once you have that credential, that means you're eligible to receive some of the WIOA funds that come with those particular folks you hire. And keep in mind that when you hire those folks that come with the WIOA resources, they must register at the One Stop or Job Center before you hire them. There are other resources, such as there's the Department of Labor money that came after the American Apprenticeship and Initiative grants, and now these intermediary contracts have resources. They're calling them employer incentives to help hire more apprentices and expand the programs and create new programs. And that's what I have the pleasure of working with Jobs for the Future and the AFL-CIO Working for America Institute to help organizations create their apprenticeships. So I hope today, as we go into this really exciting workshop and symposium, that we're going to hear a lot of resources available for those of you considering apprenticeship, answer a lot of your questions, and I'm really thankful for Jobs for the Future and the AFL-CIO Working for America Institute for hosting this program.